Good evening. I'm Maryam Alavi, Dean of the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. Welcome to our discussion on empowerment and leadership in honor of International Women's Day and Women's History Month. At Scheller College, diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of our core values, and we are dedicated to driving meaningful discussion and progress in the space. For tonight's conversation, I am excited to welcome Chanel Frazier, head of BlackRock's Atlanta Innovation Hub and global head of business strategy for the Portfolio Management Group. As the leader of the Atlanta Innovation Hub, Ms. Frazier works with leadership teams to build the firm's presence in the area and strengthen engagement with clients, universities, and local communities. In her business strategy role, she leads global teams in the execution of programs to identify and capture market opportunities for one of the firm's largest investment teams. Ms. Frazier is currently a leader in BlackRock's Black Professionals Network and plays an active role in the Women's Initiative Network and the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee. She also serves as a member of the Executive Committee of the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and also as a member of the Woodruff Arts Center Board of Directors in Atlanta. In recognition of her efforts to create a more diverse and inclusive workplace, she was named to the 2020 and 2021 Empower Top 100 Ethnic Minority Executive Role Model list, and she is the first BlackRock leader to receive the honor. Tonight's discussion will center around Ms. Frazier's leadership philosophy and approach to people empowerment, her perspective on the International Women's Day theme of break the bias, and the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in business. I will start tonight's conversation by asking Chanel a number of questions, and we will then open it to the audience. Audience members can post questions for Ms. Frazier through the Q&A feature of the software. We will get to as many questions as possible given time constraints. Chanel, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my honor to be here with you.
I would like to get started by asking about you. Tell us about your background. Who were some of the key figures and mentors that influenced your journey?
Well, I am new to Atlanta. I moved here last year to run the BlackRock Atlanta Innovation Hub, and I think I have one of the coolest jobs at BlackRock and in our industry, but I am biased. But before I moved to Atlanta, what many people don't know about me, or maybe you can hear in my accent, is that I am from Brooklyn, New York. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, but I have Southern roots. Both of my parents are natives of South Carolina, and actually my maternal grandmother was born and raised in Albany, Georgia. So for me and my family, for me to come here and lead our organization was really a full circle moment for my family in particular, my mom and dad who left the South in the 1950s during the Great Migration as a way to escape the Jim Crow South and move to New York, and to have me come back here and to run a major business. My dad always says that they left with nothing, but then I came back to run something big. And so I am standing on the shoulders of giants, and I'm thankful that those giants are two people who raised me. So if I had to think about key figures in my life, not only my parents, but a big one in honor of International Women's Day, the woman who impressed the most on me as a child, but also that has transferred into the woman I am and the professional I am, and that is my late grandmother. And that is the woman who was born in Albany, Georgia. She was born in the 1900s. and eventually moved with her dad to South Carolina, where she spent most of her childhood and adulthood. And she married and had 8 lovely children. But during that time, she progressed in a way that she looked to find leadership throughout her community, inclusive of her call to become to the ministry. She became a pastor in South Carolina. And it was during a time where it was unheard of, not accepted, not celebrated for a woman to have such a senior role in the church and in an organization. And so she used that power as a catalyst to also empower other women, not only in the church, but in the broader community. Um, and her work and what she did was not without controversy. She would even tell me that there were moments that were her male counterparts would refuse to visit her church or be in her church home because of what she was doing during that time. And so when I think about the person who had the most influence on me, it would be her by virtue of how she lived her life, but also as along her journey, how she empowered others. And so her church in South Carolina, she's no longer with us, but it is currently being led by one of the women who were one of her mentees. So creating a legacy, empowering others and creating a legacy. And I cannot thank my grandmother enough for who she was and for really making me the woman I am today.
That's a remarkable story, and she certainly sounds like a remarkable woman. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. So my next question has to do with your plans on what to study, and how was that different or similar to what you're doing now?
So I wanted to be a lawyer for most of my life. That was a lifelong dream. 5-year-old Chanel, 6-year-old Chanel, maybe 4-year-old Chanel wanted something different. I did want to be an R&B singer, rhythm and blues singer for a period of time, but realized I did not have quite the skill set to be that singer. But I wanted to be a lawyer from the time that I even knew myself. And I think the reason why is I synonymize that role and that profession with helping others with resolutions, with helping others through life. And maybe it goes back to my grandmother who was always helping others. So how could I find a space for myself in this crazy thing we call the world and do the same for others? And so it was a lifelong dream that I attained. Over a number of years and was one of the first in my family to attain that. But I started at Dartmouth College and I said I wanted to be a lawyer. And in high school, I wanted to be a lawyer. And so having attained that dream over a number of years was a great sense of pride for me and for my family in a major way. And not only became a lawyer, but a tax attorney. So my parents were like, we don't quite understand that. They still ask me, can they get deductions on their tax returns? And I was like, I did mergers and acquisitions. I wasn't a tax accountant. But the problem solving and what it meant to help others to come to a resolution for their business and their teams was something that I found deeply profound. And if I think about my profession there and the sense of community and how I was raised, I find my best comfort sets where anywhere where I am is I have to have the sense of community, either one that I am included with, or if there is one that don't feel included, the one that I am creating for other people and other individuals. And so for me, the empowerment story has always been one of creating these circles and spaces where people who look like me, who don't look like me, who just want to be part of something bigger, feel like they can show up as the best version of themselves. And so whether that took a professional path or just how I navigate the corporate world and how I navigate managing teams and growing a business. So community has been a big part of that.
Great. Thank you for sharing your story of what initially you wanted to be as an attorney, as a lawyer. How did you get to financial industry?
So I've been in the asset management industry for the past 20 years. I know I look young. I know. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you
I've been in
do,
the industry.
you do look very young, yes.
I was fishing for a compliment. Thank you. Thank you. I needed that today. Um, for the past 20 years. But like I said, I started my career as a lawyer, but it was always for asset management. So I was a lawyer for my clients tend to be large private equity and hedge funds, hedge fund managers, where I was providing them solutions and advice as to how they structured their businesses, transactions, many of which were international. For a period of time, I worked on a number of key international issues as to how these asset managers can invest either through the United States or through other jurisdictions. And so I was always in that space. And even my time at BlackRock, I started at BlackRock as an M&A tax attorney, working on large acquisitions on behalf of the firm, even doing some work with negotiating tax incentives with governmental organizations on behalf of the firm. And I loved what I did. I had practiced law at that point in time for over a decade. But it got to be a point where I wanted something more. I wanted something different. I loved the space I was in, but I worked for this large asset management firm, and I wanted to know what the investors did. I wanted to know the people who were moving money, the people who were creating portfolios, who were creating solutions for our clients, what that looked like, what they did. I just had this big interest. I knew I didn't want to be an investor at that point in my career, but I knew I wanted to do something with it. And so I had the great honor and privilege of starting a role as a chief of staff for one of the heads of our investment organizations. And it was a 2-year journey on the ground training as to how you run a business, an investment business, how you run investment teams. What does that look like in terms of your strategy, markets, and otherwise? And it was one of the best decisions that I made in my career. And I think what's been very valuable out of that whole experience is not only did I have the opportunity to elevate my skill set, I also have the opportunity to leverage my background. So a big part of looking at and transforming teams, that mergers and acquisition background came in handy. So I elevated those things and I leaned into the skills I already had. But I also, during that process, obtained a sponsor in my manager that I didn't know I could have at that point in time. So it's been a great trajectory and a great journey, but I always say I am where I am supposed to be in this moment right now. I hear people say, Chanel, did you ever imagine that you would never imagine that you would be doing something big? Maybe I didn't ever imagine that I would be doing this, but I always imagined I would be doing something big because I set high expectations for myself, for the people around me. And I have to credit my grandmother, Mary Lee McGraw, for that. So I am living my wildest dream in my career. And I wake up every day and I'm pinching myself to say, I am running 2 major businesses and I love what I do. So it is possible. It is possible.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. A wonderful position and point to be in your career journey. So you've said in the past that you like making bold choices. What are some of the bold choices you've made that stand out to you as you reflect on your journey? You, in a way, shared some of it right now with us in terms of various transition in your career, but if you want to provide us with other examples or elaborate on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I think there are a few. I always say you don't do anything big without having some calculated risk. And if there is nothing in my gut that just butterflies or something where it's like, who can this be done? There has to be something in me that feels, I wouldn't say a little scared, a little afraid, a little nervous. Because if I feel that, then I know that's truly a challenge. And when it's a challenge, it's something that I can learn from. I would say stepping away from my legal career, which had been a lifelong dream, that was bold for many ways. Some people would say, you just switch a job, you just switch your career. But for me, it meant so much to me and my family as to what that represented. I am two generations away from parents who migrated from the South during a period of time to build a better life. So to have your child be able to attain something that you yourself thought you could never attain at that point or that same age was a big deal, and I felt a sense of responsibility to continue on that path because of what it meant for everyone around me. And I think many people can relate to this. The sense of responsibility and the what does that mean to everyone else? But for me, it was also, what does this mean for Chanel? And I was never raised in a way that says, like, think in a way that's selfish. And for me, it felt selfish. And I don't know why it did, but it felt bigger and more selfish than it needed to be. But when I did do it and had the support, my family still doesn't understand what I do. They're like, you don't practice law, you don't go to a courtroom anymore. Like, what do you do? But when I realized that it was in me and I was doing it for me and for them to pivot to being the best that I could be, that it felt more comfortable. But it was not with confusion and anxiety. It was a big deal because of what it meant for everyone who was supporting me throughout my journey. I think the other bold decision, and when I say bold decisions, but also understanding the calculated risk. It's not like I'm going to go off on a ledge. I had fully, like the lawyer I am, fully diligenced and researched what those things could mean for me. And based on the information I had, made the best decision for myself in that moment. The other one would be moving further and further into the space, deeper into the space of an investment role and taking on a role running business strategy for our portfolio management group. This was a group that was brought together of a number of investment teams in 2020. And for me to be the inaugural head of business strategy and be tasked with building a team, a structure, as well as a way forward for our investment organizations was a big deal. And we are still building it. And I've realized a couple of things. It was bold in many ways to take this on, but in other ways that there are a community of people who I work with who want this to work. We want our investment organization to thrive. And leaning on the background as well as the skills that I've attained during my lifetime and during my career have always helped it. So bold choices, but bold choices are not easy. At any point in time that I've made a major decision for which there would be a challenge, I got to tell you, there's probably a couple of sleepless nights I had before making that decision.
I can appreciate that, and I really like the idea of calculated risk, the concept of calculated risk that you presented. Sometimes I get asked, what is my advice to younger people? What would I have personally done differently? And I always go back to the same topic. I always say, I wish I had taken more calculated risks. So I appreciate you sharing that story. How have you built and leveraged relationships and your network to help grow your career? You have referred to this concept of community and others, empowering others, and presumably others that help you, and networks that you develop throughout this journey.
Yes, there's this phrase, your network is your net worth. That goes without saying. And so, I talked about this, that I've been in the industry for 20 years, but I did not start in the industry having a leg up or knowing anyone who was part of it. My family members were not part of the industry. Many of them understand what BlackRock is now that I work for BlackRock. but it was a thing. So I didn't go um, in some ways, I didn't go into it. I feel fully equipped for what I was getting myself into. I always thought you do great work, you keep your head down, and people will notice, and that's how you journey, because that's what worked for me through school. You keep your head down, you do the great work, and it'll shine. And then there was a point in time that I had a mentor that shared with me the power of the network. Don't put your head down, because it's the combination of your ability and your skill set to do your core job, but also to create these relationships with others, that is going to be, the thing that takes your career trajectory on a larger path. And so I had to learn that early on, because if I didn't want to stay in the same place. And when I think about that, I think about my network being my board of directors, right? So, who are the people who I look to for advice on different topics, advice on different themes? I always joke about this. I'm from Brooklyn. I love old school hip hop. So I call it "Who's in My Cipher." And so, if those who don't know what it is, it's a cipher. It's a group of people who usually rhyming and rapping together, but they're feeding off of each other's energy. And so, who is in my board of directors? The people who are in my board of directors include my sponsors, include my mentors, include my peers, and also include the people who I mentee and individuals who I sponsor myself. I think there's one thing when we talk about your sponsor, the person who advocates for you, um, uh, in a big way, or the person who I always say advocates for me in rooms I'm not in yet. Let's see, high expectations for myself. I'm not in that room yet. So that's the person, and one or two people who are advocating for me in those rooms. The mentors, individuals who are providing advice, who are sounding boards. But I think an important component that we don't double click into is the value of that board of advisors, also including the individuals for whom you provide advice, you provide sponsorship and advocacy. And I'll give you an example. And it's a point of self-reflection. Have you ever been in a situation where someone who looks to you for advice and knows that you have made a similar decision at some point in your life will ask you how and why you made that decision? It then causes you yourself to go back and do an analysis of your rationale. What were the things that prompted you to do it? Some decisions were made on not so solid reasons. So if you ever see somebody recounting why they made a decision, and they may be thinking, that was probably for selfish reasons or not for a reason for which I want to share with my mentee who holds me in high regard. And you can see someone's eyes gloss over, like they're trying to gloss over that point, that portion of a story. That is a moment of self-reflection that all of us have at every moment in our lives. And that self-reflection is actually a major gut check. A gut check that can be good, that solidifies or validates how and why you made a decision, or one in which, maybe it was naivete, maybe it was immaturity, maybe it was selfish reasons, maybe I did it in anger, or maybe I did it with not all the information available to me. And you yourself become informed as to how you make a decision going forward based on that. Holding the mirror up and seeing it for what it is. And so when I think about those board of directors, I always think about the people. Always talk about who are the people that I aspire to be, who inspire me, who I look up to. But they could be the people who actually look up to you and provide not only the greatest inspiration, but also in your interactions with them, forces you to create the greatest insight.
Well, I like that. That was a great answer, and I really like to that you resonated with me. One was the distinction you made between a sponsor and a mentor, which is important. And the other one was this idea of your network nodes, not just being people that can provide you with advice or be your sponsor or people that you aspire to be like, but the idea that people that look up to you and at times may make you reflect on your own journey and learn from your own activities and your past. So, great answer. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your as leader of the Atlanta.
Sure. I say I have two great jobs, and one of them is leading our operations or the business of BlackRock Atlanta. And we started as 6 individuals in 2019 who came to Atlanta with a view of building a microcosm of the firm. We're building not only a microcosm of the firm, but one for which innovation has to permeate every single portion of our organization. Innovation can typically be, and one thinks, in the technology space, which we are heavily concentrated in technology and data analytics. But it also permeates the way that we build portfolios for our clients, how we onboard clients, and how we deliver for them. And so when we're creating this microcosm of innovation being key, this is why our partnerships with universities like Georgia Tech is one of our most profound, because we have to not only build a pipeline of talent that's currently here, but also tap into the diverse type pipeline and well-educated pipeline that exists here in Georgia. And so as I'm building, and we are building BlackRock Atlanta, it is centered on, my strategy for our group is centered on the 3 C's: client, community, and culture. So culture, I'll start with that one, and is the latter one. It is, what is the experience of a BlackRock Atlanta employee? We have a very diverse workforce that is representative of the Atlanta community. We have a workforce that is mostly on the younger side. So you traverse every single proxy for what is considered diversity here in this office. And so it is incumbent upon me and the leadership team that I work with. And by the way, our leadership team is reflective of that same community. So Black, Latinx, LGBTQ, neurologically diverse, all represented on this leadership team. So it is incumbent upon us to think about and strive for the ways that every employee who comes through our doors are saying that they are proud to work for BlackRock Atlanta, and how that translates into how they interact in the Atlanta community and how they also help recruit for us. Client, at the end of the day, we are in client service. We are fiduciaries to our clients. And so we have to be focused on best-in-class service and best practices for how we provide solutions for our clients. And lastly, community. Dean Alavi, this goes back to the core of who I am, the core of my leadership style. But I think about me being part of this Atlanta community. I can't be part of it and be part of the business community and grow this fantastic business if I don't feel like me and my people are investing in it. So the engagements and the partnerships we have with nonprofits, civil communities, universities, that is some of the best work that we do here, and that's the work that keeps our people enthused to being here in Atlanta. So I am proud. We started with 6. We're almost at 600 and counting. And it is a dynamic organization for which I'm pleased to call home. I didn't think a year or 2 years ago that I would say I'm an Atlantan, but I think I can fairly say I'm a Georgia Peach now, and I'm okay with that.
Well, that sounds wonderful. That is a great story, and the issue around culture and the importance of culture. I am sure that you have heard the expression that says, culture eats strategy for lunch. So that's a great place to start in any organization, an empowering and strong culture. So you sort of touched upon that a little bit, but I still ask my question anyway. One of the goals at BlackRock is to expand the company's presence in Atlanta. You have already made some comments about how you plan on doing that, but see if you can give us a little bit more specifics. Tell us how you are going about doing that.
Sure. So not only expanding, but being intentional in our expansion. The expansion of our business and teams, it's not only increasing the numbers, but what are the roles and what do they look like here? So when we talk about innovation being key throughout, right? I want to make sure that we have teams that are built into the value proposition of what that looks like. And one of the teams that works closely with our investment teams, their focus is how do you source and analyze alternative sets of data to be able to create signals into one's investment portfolio. That work is being done primarily here in Atlanta for investors around the globe. So continued focus on initiatives and measures like that that have a meaningful impact throughout. The other piece is as we build is creating ecosystems where people feel like they can have internal mobility, that they can have successful careers at BlackRock, but that they can also have successful careers right here in Atlanta. So there is this theme if you graduate from law school, business school, university, where are the big financial centers? I have to go to London, New York, San Francisco. No, you can have a great career right here in Atlanta. And we want to prove that. And so some of the goals in looking at that is what does one look like? What does one determine in terms of or look to for the determination of success in their careers? For some people, it's role, scope of title, it's the ability to move up the chain in terms of promotion. And so we've had all of that. Especially since I've taken over last year, we've had a number of individuals who started in technology roles and are doing other things. We had one individual who started as a technologist and is now a trader, a fixed income trader, because one does not imagine the similar skill sets that are transferable from one to the other. Who knew that the M&A tax attorney would be running strategy and growing a business, the transferable skills. The other piece of this, promotions. We had 40 people who were promoted during the last promotion cycle right here in Atlanta, and a few of them were promoted to managing director, which is one of the highest corporate titles here at the firm. So I say key priorities is building the team and culture here, but being quite intentional as to what success looks like, and being the hallmark of one's ability to grow one's business and career here in Atlanta. You don't have to go to New York. You don't have to go to San Francisco or London. You can work for a financial, a fintech firm and be successful right here within these borders.
Interesting points you bring up. 2 points. One is this idea of growing the presence and growing the opportunities for individuals who want to be in the financial industry in Atlanta. I must tell you that a lot of our students, particularly graduate students, they get to receive their MBAs, they do want to stay in Atlanta. So I think it's a win-win situation both for BlackRock as well as our students to have this option of not necessarily having to move to New York or London that are financial centers, if you will. Mm-hmm. So that's a very good thing. And we also talked about this concept of transferable skills. Mm-hmm. And that is, as an institute of higher education and as a business school in particular, we really try to develop in our students what we refer to as capabilities. We call them capabilities, which are these transferable skills. So that they can go from one domain in another and still have those capabilities. So I'm glad to hear you talk about those.
And when you're graduating from school, university, or from grad school, you have an idea of what your career is going to look like. It doesn't pan out that way. There are going to be bumps and turns and all other things that you would never imagine. But going to your point, those capabilities are the things that are part of your foundation for what you'll ultimately do and what you'll ultimately end up enjoying to do. You spend more time at work and with colleagues than you do family. at least like it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm with you in terms of capabilities and this concept of having cognitive flexibility, just being able to look at different opportunities, different domains, etc. So I'll ask you one more question and then we'll open
Sure.
it to the audience. As you look toward the future, what excites you?
I Someone asked me the other day to give them a one word description for what we're building here in Atlanta and what we're building in PMG. And that word was opportunity. Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. Um, Particularly here in Atlanta, we have the great fortune and opportunity to have been welcomed by the business community, by the university community, which makes part of that start quite helpful and friendly. But we are creating an organization, or growing an organization through the sponsorship of our headquarters, BlackRock, to be best in class here in the Southeast. And so when I think about what we've done going from 6 to 600, increasing the assets that we manage right here in Atlanta, increasing the number of clients many of our clients are some of the name brands that you would know here in Atlanta. They want to know that their money is being managed by someone who's also local. So when I think about what I'm looking forward to, I think particularly in the business is opportunity. For me personally, it's the same. I know that the Chanel you see before you is not the same one that would have been before you 2, 3 years ago, or maybe even 2 months ago. And so if I think about the opportunities for me to not only invest in the business, invest in myself, and invest in our teams, evolution is key. And so I am looking forward for more to come, bigger and better, but intentional about bigger and better. Not bigger and better just for the sake of being bigger and better.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. It's all about value creation, and I'm
Mhm.
really using the word value very broadly, not only just in terms of monetary value and return on
Right.
investment, but social and personal value as well. So
Hmm.
that's remarkable. So let me start.
I tell our teams that we're not going to just grow, we're going to deepen impact. So I think that goes quite hand in hand with your conversation on value.
Absolutely. So let me stop here and see if there are any questions from the audience.
We do have one question so far.
Okay.
How do you go about networking with folks that don't look like you? I am a minority in gender and age in my industry and company, and I find it difficult to connect.
Hmm. Um, I'll say this. I mean, it may be obvious, but I'll say it. I'm a Black woman in corporate America, a senior Black woman in corporate America. There are not a ton of people who look like me. There have never been a ton of people who look like me. Um, and so, what I have found in terms of the value of creating those networks is looking for people and for commonalities that are above and beyond maybe my ethnic, racial identity, shared value or values, shared purpose at work, common themes. Um, I would say the majority of people who I have considered mentors and sponsors, particularly those who are in my industry, do not look like me. But what has been valuable in networking with them is that they've ultimately always wanting to invest and believed in me. And so, how do you go about creating those relationships? Some of them will be, I know, and I've been in other places where they'll set you up and you have a mentor relationship that is part of a program. But the best mentoring relationships I have been organic. So, who are the people I'm working with? Is there a great project for which I'm working with someone that I want to know more about them? I want to know more about their skill set. I want to know more about how the things that they are working on and how I can equally attain those things. And so, I think looking at the landscape of the people who are around you, who are the people who admire and who are inspired by you, even if they don't look like you? right? Because you just identify yourself as a minority, and there may be someone who comes behind you who is inspired by you who doesn't look like you. So I always go in with the best of intentions on some of those interactions, but I also go in with a plan, especially if it's a senior individual or someone who is more senior within my organization. Not just always a get to know you, but what are the things that you would like to accomplish as part of that conversation, as part of that relationship? I have people who come to me all the time and it's just, I kind of just want to get to know you. That's great if you want just a friend, right? But if you have a higher purpose as to what you want to get out to that organization, out of that relationship, is it advice? Is it advocacy? Is it championing? You need to be as intentional about that first interaction as you are for anything else. I'll give you an anecdote, maybe not very specific to you, but I had a young person come into my office and says, I just wanted to get to know you, which I value. And I said, let's do that. But the individual then progressed and started to talk about the things that they wanted in their life and their career and what advice I can give them and all of the things that we go through that structure, which is fantastic. But the person came into my office unprepared. They had no clear agenda. They had no insight into what they wanted. They actually showed up. I'm old school. No pen, no paper, no iPad, nothing. With a blank stare and ready to be an open book. And you have to come to that conversation with a goal like you would anything else. Because otherwise you would have that other person who you want to engage with perhaps think, I don't know how I can help this person, so I'll just have this conversation and you moved on. When you engage, you want to follow up. Even if the follow-up is, I'd like you to introduce me to someone who from your network who can help with this. I'd like your insight as to how I can learn something. So be intentional about it, but also don't let the fact that the person does not look like you or have a similar background to you be a roadblock. In fact, that perspective can actually be quite helpful for you because it may get you out of whatever echo chamber of people who look, maybe think like you and have similar backgrounds.
Thank you. We have a new question. You've been very agile in your career. How do you maintain agility to avoid getting entrenched and miss new opportunities to flex into something else?
Making sure you're not getting entrenched. I think it all depends on you and who you are and what your goals are. I think equally important is I always go back to my gut check. I always go back to what is my vision and what is my objective. Just like I do objectives every year for my business, priorities for my business, I also do it for Chanel for life. What is my vision for what I want personally and professionally? And so how do I keep from being entrenched? I have to have something that's a goal that's beyond the today, that's beyond the current moment. And as I think about anything that I'm doing, particularly in the professional space, if I feel at a point in time that I'm not learning as much, maybe I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I could be great at it, like really good at it. But if it's something for which I no longer feel challenged, then for me, it's time to move on. And that may be the same proxy for you. How do you avoid becoming entrenched and becoming part of that spin cycle? It's like, okay, it's like Groundhog Day every day, and this is what I'm doing. Are you continually challenged? Even if you look at a professional like Dean Alavi, I'm sure just today you've probably been challenged multiple times because that is part of your growth and your evolution as a leader. So I would say look for those if you feel like, and give it a moment. Don't say, 2 weeks I haven't been challenged. Over a course of a longer period of time, am I learning new things? Am I being challenged in my role? Am I contributing to whether or not I am challenged? Like, am I developing new skill sets? And if you truly feel like that's something for which it becomes stagnant, then think about the ways that you can pivot to other things.
Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, so I want to take this opportunity and ask you one other question. And in a way, as I mentioned, this question is usually asked of me. What do you wish you could tell your younger self to do differently in terms of your career?
Oh, I would have a bunch of things to tell 22-year-old Chanel, 23-year-old Chanel, 30-year-old Chanel, all of the above. But I think the most poignant, I would say, with two. Get out of your own way. I think there were periods of time that I created a narrative in my head as to why I couldn't or shouldn't do something that didn't come from anyone else. But I psyched myself out because it was different. It was different from what I knew. It was different from what I lived and what I experienced. And I talked about those bold choices, but those bold choices didn't happen at birth. Like, I didn't come out at birth and I said, I started in asset management, I'm going to be bold. No, they came over time. They came over time with being comfortable in my skill set and honing my skill set and building my confidence as a professional and being in spaces where I was celebrated and honored. But there are periods of time that I call it a spin cycle because I doubted it. Like, this is so different than what I know. It makes me uncomfortable. Guess what? That discomfort was great. And I didn't know it. But I refused to touch it because it just felt like everything around me was going to blow up. The other thing I would say goes hand in hand in that is, for me as a woman, as a young woman, as a young Black woman in spaces, but frankly, I might have been one of the few and the only, taking up space, literally and figuratively. Sometimes it's in the form of speaking up for things that may be a solution to a problem, or for things that are seen and be happening in a room for which no one else is speaking up. And that didn't come early on either. It came as I progressed and became more senior in my space, but taking up the space and having the confidence to go about and say, this is what I believe, this is what I have a high level of conviction upon. I've seen this with other women as well, particularly if I look at key roles or things that I have, open jobs. Some of the women in the organization will say, I looked at that job rec and I can do 7 of the 10 of those things, but not all 10. Then I speak to a male counterpart who's like, I can do 5 or 6, but not all 10. Guess who ends up applying?
The 5 and 6 one. Yeah.
Take up space.
Yeah.
You never know.
That is such an interesting point to bring up. I think to some extent that may have to do with, and I see that a lot more in women in terms of the mindset for women, that unless they are sure they can do 110% of what it is in terms of a job or the project, they don't put their hands up. And maybe a part of it having to do with being a perfectionist, but I see that a lot. And that's really one of the ways I counsel and I talk to my female students, either graduate students or undergraduate. It's okay. You can grow into the position. Mm-hmm. You can learn. Go for it. So I know exactly what you mean. I see that a lot.
And understanding when you go into environments that people you are hired for a combination of skill and potential.
Exactly.
It's a combination. No one expects, okay, they will hit all of this out of the park and they'll do it to perfection day one. No one expects that combination of your skill and the potential for what you can drive for that organization.
Absolutely. Well said. If there are questions from the audience, I would like to offer them the opportunity of asking additional questions.
We have time for one more question, so this will be the last one.
Okay.
I am new to a company that is full of smart and educated people, which may seem intimidating and overwhelming and inspiring at the same time. Besides taking further education, such as an MBA, which is part of my plan, what advice can you give to excel in a high-performing organization?
One, to take a step back. You are around and you are among and working with these very smart people because you are one of them, right? So you are there because you are supposed to be there. How do you continue to elevate? I love the way you frame this because it shows that you are on a journey of continuous evolution in your own skill set. Some of the best training I have had great university training. I've had that. The best training I've had is on the job training. And so one of the best ways that I can get to the next thing that I'm doing is to excel at the current job or mandate that I have. So as you progress in your career, or you're progressing in this current role, what are the things that you're doing well? Where are the gaps? And then understanding where the gaps are, maybe in your knowledge base or your ability to complete something, to then investigate what does it mean to fill that? Is it through a course? Is it through sitting at the desk with someone? Is it through an interaction where you need to be able to do that particular task or strategy on a regular basis in order to hone that muscle memory? And so I would say, because you are in an organization where you are around smart, educated people and people who do these things well, it's a great opportunity for you to tap into that network. Here we go, going back to that. Tap into that network of people who could be advisors and can help you upskill as you progress. I always say sometimes help is not that far. Sometimes it's right around you. So lean into that organization, lean into those individuals, lean into the resources that your firm does have, and realize that the people who you aspire to didn't always have that knowledge base.
Okay, well, I think that pretty much takes care of our time. I would like to thank you, Chanel, for taking the time to engage in this meaningful conversation with us. We are inspired by your example and your perspectives on leadership and the power of equity and inclusion. You have provided many valuable insights for us as individuals, as well as members of teams and organizations, as we seek to make an impact in our own spheres of influence, and really in terms of our own careers as well as others. Our gratitude also goes out to our audience members for taking the time to participate in this discussion. I hope you walk away from this conversation empowered to create change and drive progress in your profession, in your organization, and larger society. Chanel, thank you again for your time and for the wisdom you have shared. And this concludes our program. Have a great rest of the evening.